In the near future, some dangerous creatures come out of nowhere in order to kill humanity, resulting in a cataclysmic event that leaves few survivors. There are numerous theories regarding what transpired. However, these are simply rumors, and no one knows the true story. Spoiler ahead, watch out! In town, Paul is looking for supplies when the sirens begin to sound. He dashes out and makes his way through the streets, hiding where necessary and avoiding any shouts and explosions. As the city fills with black smoke, Paul escapes to a ruined house on the outskirts, and there he reunites with his two babies, whom he must care for alone. Paul's boys are now mature teenagers after 15 years. They reside in the exact same place and walk out throughout the day to look for supplies. However, they remain hidden at night. As soon as the sun begins to drop, Joseph covers the windows and instructs their dog Rocco to enter the house. Paul waits outside until Thomas returns, then scolds him for being late. Thomas reveals that he enjoys helping their neighbors, the Rose family, who owns a farm. The three of them then made careful to secure all doors and windows before having dinner. Paul scolds Thomas once more, stating that if he is late again, he will no longer be permitted to leave the borders. Joseph mocks his brother for it, and their quarrel quickly develops into a physical brawl, but Paul intervenes and reminds them that they are men, not animals. After dinner, Paul is distracted when Rocco starts scratching and grumbling on the floor. Paul and Thomas proceed downstairs, taking it as an omen, and are shocked by the unexpected banging on the door. It appears that some creatures are attempting to step inside, so they instantly hold the door to prevent them from breaking it open. There's an abundance of shaking and striking for several seconds before the creatures lose up and leave. Then, Thomas blames Joseph for not helping, but Joseph discloses that he has been listening to learn more. There were 3 attempts. The first was 10 seconds, the second was 20 seconds, and the final one was simply 1 second. Joseph thinks the first was a test, the second was a serious attempt to break through, and the third was simply a furious hit. The next day, they investigate the door and discover all of the scratches on the wood. The door had decreased its strength, so Paul and his boys set out to seek wood to strengthen it. They return home with their discovery, and as Thomas chops the wood, Paul looks at Joseph, who has been creating something in the barn. Joseph reveals he's been attempting to construct a vehicle because he's tired of feeling constrained and terrified, but he can't make it work. Paul feels impressed and takes a look, immediately making a few tweaks that eventually get the car running. Excited, Paul joins the teams for a ride in order to show them how to drive. They return home after an hour, and Paul informs them that the windows still require strengthening, so he sends the guys to the river to salvage. Thomas is upset because he was told he may head to the farm today, but Paul believes this is more essential. The brothers leave in the car, and Thomas begins blaming Joseph for this, claiming that Paul sent Thomas to secure his brother. When they drive by the farm, in the house, Paul completes strengthening the door before taking a break to smoke near the waterfall. As he looks around, he notices a black, creepy hole among the rocks. Meanwhile, Joseph rushes to the river and steps into an old ruined ship to find supplies. Inside a locker, he discovers a pin-up from a nasty magazine, which silences him for a second. Then he peers further inside and is shocked by a swarm of bugs. They flutter about him and try to touch his skin, so he needs to get out of them quickly. At the farm, Thomas assists the family with chores. However, it soon becomes clear that what drives him to visit is the owner's daughter, Charlotte. The youngsters clearly have a crush on another person, so they decide to take a walk on the field together. Charlotte shows Thomas a piece of rope tied to a tree, stating that when she was younger, she was only permitted to play outdoors if she touched the tree, so she would secure it to herself so she could run more freely while remaining theoretically linked to the tree. After it's time for Thomas to leave, Charlotte hugs him tightly. The sun is starting to set, so the two boys should get back home quickly. As soon as Paul goes home, he feels worried as he only finds Rocco, not either of his sons. Joseph jumps back into the car, and it doesn't start right away, but after a few tries, it works. At the same time, we see Thomas running as fast as he can, but he stumbles and falls into an empty space in the ground. When Joseph comes to pick up his brother, he does not observe him and continues on his way. When he gets back home and tells his father what happened, Paul urges him to go inside while he and Rocco search for Thomas. This is where things become more interesting. Thomas wakes in the crevice, his body hurting. Using a lighter, he looks around the space and is surprised to discover a creature reaching through a hole in the wall. It even shouts as heard by Paul and Rocco. Thomas cautiously pulls out a little knife and attacks the monster's hand, forcing it to run away into the small opening. However, when Thomas takes a step back, a second creature approaches. Then Paul arrives to save him. Once confirming that Thomas is okay, Paul and Rocco discover a tunnel that leads directly into into the crevice. They make the decision to stay in the crevice until sunrise, back to protect themselves. They hear the creatures approaching from the hole and prepare a flare, merely causing the ground to begin shaking. It turns out that the monsters have moved under the ground, isolating the gang in the crevice by sealing the escape with dirt. A crevice keeps on creaking, so Paul inserts the flare into the hole that is opening in the ground. When the monsters try to reach out, Paul causes a minor explosion. In the house, Joseph notices an excessive creaking and begins making preparations. He falls asleep moments later while he sits in front of the main door, a rope attached to his chair. Soon, a creature lifts the wood covering the opening in the door and goes inside, extending a nail in order to check if Joseph is really sleeping. As the boy doesn't respond, the creature goes in, just for Joseph to reveal that he was playing and pull the rope. A cage falls down from the ceiling, immediately capturing the monster. Then Joseph covers the cage with a blanket. The next morning, he becomes worried given that the others have not come back yet, so he drives out in the car to look for them. Meanwhile, Thomas has dug across the scattered mud, reopened the entrance, and pulled his severely wounded father out. Rocco also emerges and tracks the car's sound in order to locate Joseph. The brothers quickly carry Paul into the car, after which they take him home. When they speak about how to continue, Thomas finds the cage and looks beneath the blanket, causing the creature to go insane. Joseph explains that light hurts the monsters and quickly replaces the blanket. Joseph reveals that the thing only took 8 seconds to enter last night. He's also certain that there was another creature that disappeared. Thomas reminds them that the monsters are intelligent. The previous night they killed a group in the cave, so they may have come here for revenge, as Charlotte stated that they rarely visit the farm. Joseph believes that Paul killed the creatures. To prove himself, Thomas tries to kill the beast in the cage. Joseph tries to stop him since he needs to investigate it, but the monster comes out and immediately hides under the bed. When it eventually comes up, Rocco begins barking at it, prompting the creature to change and attack. Joseph hurries to hold it down while Thomas uses an axe to hack off its head. Still curious to discover more, Joseph takes the body to the barn and begins to open it up. Regardless of how much he chops, he acquires no additional insight into what it could be. Then Thomas suggests that they get Paul to Charlotte's farm, where they have actual medication. Joseph doesn't think the family is going to help him, but Thomas convinces him to accompany him along. The brothers put Paul into the car and go to the farm, where Charlotte's parents explain that they don't possess sufficient medical supplies available and refuse to take in somebody who is seriously injured. Charlotte objects, but it is disregarded. However, her parents eventually agree to let Thomas stay, leaving Paul and Joseph with more stuff at their home. Joseph quickly walks away while Thomas follows, and they argue. Joseph blames Thomas for their father's forthcoming death. Thomas is upset and throws his brother to the ground, choking him. Then once he realizes what he's doing, he steps back. Joseph gets into his vehicle and speeds away with his wounded father. Thomas joins the family on the farm. Charlotte then shares some delicious food with Thomas and shows him some amazing stuff. The teen shares a lovely moment in a kiss, but gets disrupted by Charlotte's father, who sends her away to another room. On his journey back, Joseph observes the sheep fleeing in panic and piles of dirt everywhere, indicating that the monstrous creatures are migrating underground. He believes the creatures are under the house. After taking care of his father, Joseph walks to the barn and begins gathering materials for a new plan. He also begins blocking all of the windows, and as he walks about the home, he slips in when he walks on a carpet. There is a hole underneath it, so he guesses that the monsters have already moved inside. At the house, Charlotte discovers Thomas roaming all around the kitchen. He is still worried for his father, so he intends to find medication and leave. Charlotte gives him the medicine. They are overheard. Thomas runs away, but before he can reach the gate, a farm employee pulls a revolver at him, suspecting him for a robbery. Thomas tries to explain that Charlotte handed the item to him. However, the man does not believe him. All of the workers work together and take Thomas to the barn, where he gets tied up. A man prepares to shoot Thomas. However, right at that point, a hole is created beneath him, and he falls, missing the shot. The other men rush to check on him, just as a creature emerges from the hole. Charlotte's parents are awakened in the main house by a noise. The father grabs a candle to conduct an investigation, only to have a creature enter the room and attack. The lit candle falls straight away and sparks a fire, while the monster attempts to kill them both. The father pulls it back, and the mother rushes out of the room to look for her daughter. However, the creature attacks her before she can get too far. Charlotte is in her bedroom when she discovers that her parents have been killed. When the sound stops, she walks out and is terrified to see a trail of blood, which she pursues until she discovers the creature inside the bathroom holding her mother's body. The men inside the barn are trying to fight away the creatures, yet are unsuccessful. They begin to be slain one by one. The barn swiftly starts fire, and Thomas manages to push over the objects that he is chained to, splitting the wood to free his hands. At that moment, a creature finds him, but Charlotte shoots it down before it has the chance to attack. Thomas notices the house upon fire. Charlotte says that her parents have passed away, so they decide to meet up at Thomas's home. Returning to Joseph, he throws many pieces of furniture over the hole. Then he checks on his unresponsive father and kisses his forehead prior to preparing to fight. Joseph admits that he needs Thomas's assistance, yet their chat is cut short when Paul awakes. He instantly takes the medication and instructs his sons to keep battling. Joseph links his plan alongside the others, and they collect all of the gas cans they have discovered in the barn, while Rocco continues to bark to warn them of impending danger. The gang also relocates an old freezer into the home. Thomas and Charlotte continue strengthening every remaining window, while Joseph creates a pile of furniture and then dumps all of the gas upon it. On top of that, he places every explosive thing he can find in one of his father's cigarettes, which is slowly burning down. Suddenly, the material that is covering the hole begins to shake, and a creature emerges from the chimney into the room alongside Paul. Another creature emerges from the hole, and Thomas stabs it through the back as it passes through a door. The beast quickly strikes, but Thomas retrieves his dagger and stabs it in the head, killing it. Another comes after Charlotte, but she promptly shoots it down. Both of them then rush back with Joseph and begin moving the freezer once again, only for the door to open behind them, displaying Paul is awake and covered in blood after killing the chimney monster. Paul obtains Charlotte's gun and begins shooting at the floor in order to kill the creatures underneath. However, the horde is massive, and it quickly comes into the area, running towards him. Paul kicks the first one, causing considerable movement. A few creatures still remain, but the youngsters rush to kill them before they can harm Paul. Afterward, the three teenagers and Rocco rush to the freezer. Rather than following them, Paul shuts the door. The gang hides inside the freezer. A new troop of creatures rushes in, and Paul holds them before the pile of furniture eventually explodes, causing the entire home to disintegrate and set fire. The freezer starts rolling and continues for several minutes. When it eventually stops, the teenagers exit and urgently search for Paul, just for a creature to leap out. The entire group rushes to their car and speeds away as the monster approaches them, encased in fire. Charlotte's bullets are ineffective, but when the monstrous creature gets close enough, she hits the monster with her gun, causing it to fall apart. The following day, the youngsters come back to the house and choose not to rebuild in the same location. After gathering any objects they could find, they bury all of their family members and make their final farewells. After that, the three teenagers and their pet Rocco leave in their car, seeking to locate a new home. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap of the movie Arcadian. Please leave a comment below on what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video, and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, light, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.